Hello my wonderful audience over there interested in crime and detective stuff. Today Truth Detective is going to be telling you about the New York Mafia in the 1920s. The time of the fedora hat and the time of the detective. We're going to be talking to you about the court system during those times and how the mafia kind of prevailed through the court system and how they bribed and got away most of the time during the time of the 20s and 30s. Today I was reading this book called Mob and the City. You can check it out. It's about the New York City and the mafia during the 20s. And it talked about one mafia boss and a mafioso that got sentenced for 6 months in prison. The whole career of his professional criminal career. During that whole time, he got sentenced to 6 months in prison. He got charged with 13 felonies. So bad crimes and some things related to it told about bookmaking. So the New York police was very corrupt during those times, very corrupt. And I started to think the times were so different. It was very brutal survival. And it was all about public image. And I believe that the New York police and the mafia actually thought about their public image together. The court really wasn't about law at all. And I believe that the New York police kind of thought about their public image in the same way as the mafia thought, as I said before. They thought that how are we going to get away with this, and how are we going to get away with this so that we don't lose the complete trust of the population. Think about this. If there's rampant crime and the police are not doing anything, about it, and they are just bribed, how can they get away with it? Well, they have to control their public image. And I feel that this was actually done, not just in a way that I do something over here, the mafioso, and then you catch up to me. It was more done, that we, go at the same pace. The police weren't trying to chase the mafioso in the 20s. It was genius, and it probably couldn't happen in the modern world anymore. But during those times, there wasn't the surveillance machine, The surveillance machine didn't exist. And for example, as I said in one of the previous videos, there were whole blocks that had been bribed. The New York NUPD had been bribed so the police wouldn't do anything about, for example, drug dealing. And it was all about that public image, For example, one mafioso, what was the name? Was it Luciano? I think it was Luciano, and he owned a garment factory, and that was his public, image. This is what I do, and then he had this mafia related stuff going on also, and it was a very interesting time, and how these guys were kind of associated. And when you think about, for example, felonies, they are a category of crime, and they got away with it. And one of the detectives in the book, actually, an undercover detective, testamented or said that you had about 50-50 chance of getting away from the charges you were placed in if you were in an influential mafia family. And the families, he said that if you ended up in prison it was because you were stupid or that you didn't have much influence. So it was all about influence. With influence you could get away with many things. And then there was the part and the timeline of huge amount of like mafia related assassinations. And when I read those, things, I kind of felt that the police kind of at least tried to kind of draw the line there, There was a lot of stuff that these guys got away with related to, like for example, the Prohibition era trafficking of illegal booze and like drugs, and also even assaults and this kind of stuff. And yeah, but then and of course like all kinds of things related to money and gambling. And did you know also that boxing was also like handled by the mafia in the underground during those times when boxing as a sport was kind of I don't know if it was fully illegal, but most of the matches were illegal. So the mob handled it, and almost all of this, they got away with. But for example, if you think about Al Capone, for example, have you read about the man? He was actually very, like almost law-abiding when he was young, But he started working for the mafia because the mafia just paid better, The mafia paid better, and he did things that were barely illegal, So I felt that the mob also worked much like a drug, that you got like deeper and deeper into it after you started like doing this, like jobs for the mob. I don't know, this is just one book's way to tell it, but it's very interesting, and it's the 20s, I have no idea how the mob like works nowadays, and it's very different probably, but those were the times, and I'm going to review that book for you in the future, and I'm going to read probably more about this timeline. I'll probably read a book also about John Gotti, if you know about that man, but that was the 80s, the mafia in the 80s, and things probably had changed a huge lot, but I feel that the surveillance system is probably one of the best and the worst thing that has happened in terms of the mob. So that's the speech and the talk for you today. If you know more about this, and if you are kind of interested in the history of crime in the United States, then feel free to contribute your stuff. I also have that book that deals more about those not mafia types, like the Dillingers and those kind of dudes, they usually weren't actually part of the mafia. And yeah, so that's that. And of course, they also got away with huge amount of robberies, that kind of, stealing. And they did that stuff, or actually the mafioso, they did that stuff to each other also. So at least to other families. But at least one of the books I read about the modern mafia, it talked about when you are in a mafia family that protects you against like thievery from at least that family, It's kind of also protection for that. I'm looking into what were the motives for like those guys joining the mob, and I feel that it was usually the poverty, and it was usually also kind of the money, and also the hopeless situations in those times, and maybe even some, like evil elements in those guys. But very few of the mafioso I read about seemed kind of pure evil, Yeah, they were called the good fellas. Look into this is interesting. So the book is called The Mob and the City. Read about it. It's interesting, and yeah. Thanks for watching.